Good evening all. Sorry for the slightly late start. Welcome to this meeting of the Climate Policy and Scrutiny Subcommittee. I'm Councillor Alan Edwards, the Chair of the Subcommittee. Before we start the meeting, we're not expecting a fire drill, but you know the procedure. If there are no members of the public, so I won't read the rest of that. If you could make sure you've switched your mobile phones to silent and note that this meeting is being live streamed. If there's any technical difficulties with the meeting, it will be recorded and will be uploaded as soon as possible after it concludes. Members, if you could introduce yourself starting from the left, and we'll introduce visiting councillors afterwards as well.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Jamie Huntman.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Peter May.
Councillor Sue Brooke.
Councillor Naneem Pashi.
Good evening, Chair. Councillor Sharon Ainsley.
Thank you all.
Good evening, thank you. It's Councillor Rhys Langley.
Thank you for joining us. Item 1 on the agenda is apologies for absence. I believe we've got no apologies, which is good. And I have to ask you all, are there any interests to declare on the matters before us tonight?
No interest.
No interest. Thank you very much. Okay, that brings us to agenda item 4, the Climate Action Plan for 2025.
Oh, sorry, we'll start the minutes from the 1st of July.
Okay, apologies. We need to review and look at the minutes from our meeting on the 1st of July. Are these agreed? Agreed. Thank you. In that case, I will sign them, and then we can move on to our actions. Okay, item 4, the Climate Action Plan for 2025. Members, we have been looking at this for a while in parts, but we have the report from our Assistant Director for Climate and Growth before us, which is seeking our views on the proposed action plan for delivering improvements to our climate and sustainability performance within the organisation and across the borough. Ms Parrott, do you wish to say anything at this point to introduce the report?
No, I mean, as you've just said, we've been going through this for several meetings now, but I would advise you that the Cabinet did endorse for guidance the Essex Climate Action Commission report as part of its meeting in July, so obviously you're working within that remit now. And I would just draw you back to paragraph 2.1 of the covering report, which reminds you that we're working towards the corporate ambition of having a cleaner and greener environment, which specifically focuses as part of that on reducing our carbon footprint as an organisation.
Thank you for that clarification, and I suggest that we therefore dive straight in. We are starting on page 16 of the Appendix 1. Which is where we got up to at our previous discussions. It's the section that starts with Assistant Director, Finance and Procurement. Okay, members, are there any questions on this first section of incorporating sustainability considerations under our starting there under local action? Shall I take the silence as a no? Okay, we'll move on to the second part. The future contracts with a value of over 50,000 to require suppliers to provide data. Councillor Ainsley?
I thought we'd covered this. That's why I was quickly scanning through. I thought we covered it in our last meeting.
We did discuss this at the working group. Can you just clarify for the committee if any changes we suggested at the working group have been incorporated?
So we had that informal meeting, I don't know the date, on the 22nd of July, just to sort of sense how you were feeling about this so that we could potentially get through this work this evening, sort of deal with sort of queries that you had then. But we haven't incorporated the changes because it was a roll forward agenda from when we last met. So, okay. Holly did circulate a note of the points that you raised.
Okay, so in the interests of making sure that we capture the points that we had a discussion on, if anybody's got points, we'll go back to incorporating sustainability considerations. So if there's anything anybody did pick up on there that you'd like to... Councillor Ainsley?
Yes, regarding the future contracts with a value over 50k, I recall that I mentioned how do we actually verify the green credentials that they are saying they have.
Amanda, if you can give us some insight there.
Yes, I think the way that we're looking to do that is within contracts to specify the green requirements that we're seeking, and particularly with the monitoring side of things, it'll be identifying what it is that we specifically need them to monitor and report on to us, because at the moment we're not able to report on scope 3 emissions because we're not able to collect that data because it's not part of our contracts at the moment. We talked about whether we should apply that to all contracts, but I think that there was a discussion around the sort of disproportionate impacts that might have on small businesses to potentially focus on those large suppliers, and particularly those large suppliers that do things that would have a particular environmental impact for us, such as the grounds maintenance and street scene contracts, where they're obviously out and about doing stuff related to our green environment and to waste, but also their operations have an environmental impact potentially in terms of maybe the choice of vehicles that they use or the nature of the chemicals and so forth that they use in their operations. So there'll be certain suppliers that or certain contracts where we would particularly look to include that.
Are there any other questions on the future contracts with a value of over 50k or the smaller council? Councillor May?
Sorry, this is just a general one. Like, with getting the contractors going green, which is obviously positive, but I mean, it's like electric vehicles are much more expensive. So how are we going to deal with that?
So I think this point's probably covered under the waste heading because we've looked at that in terms of obviously our own waste operations, but there are different ways of doing things, and I suppose what the Essex Climate Action Commission work looks at is sort of net zero by 2050. So there are steps along the way, and obviously there are costs to implications that are different. So potentially it could be that they look to hybrid vehicles, which obviously they are not as expensive as EV. I've got one myself for that very reason. But also I know when we come to the waste, we'll talk about vegetable oil usage, which reduces emissions. It's in the waste bit. I think it's 93% without actually having to swap your engine around from a diesel engine. You can put with a degree of cleaning and so forth in between. You can put vegetable oil in a diesel engine. So there are options there that are greener without necessarily going to full EV straight away, recognising that cost. And certainly that's something that, you know, when I was talking to Terry around this point, there is that kind of cost balance sort of implication that needs to be sort of factored into the decision making. Because, yeah, doing some of these things is terribly expensive, and it may not be something that you necessarily want to jump to straight away. And certainly from Terry's point of view, it wasn't just about cost, it was also about the effectiveness of the operation and whether the electric vehicles had the range to be able to deliver that operation without running out of battery, basically. And I know that when it was implemented in Basildon, they had electric vehicles that in very cold weather weren't able to do their full routes. So there's obviously learning that we can take from other organisations as well. But certainly it's not a sort of necessarily a rush to EV, it's a rush to a solution that is appropriate to Castle Point, and not necessarily always a rush either. You know, if you've got a vehicle that's 1 or 2 years old, you wouldn't replace that because obviously there's all the materials and so forth in that, that, you know, it's cost energy, it's cost materials and so forth to make a vehicle. So it's about actually thinking about lifetimes and life cycles and so forth and bringing things in at the right point as opposed to doing things just for the sake of it.
I think you make a good point about considering the embodied carbon and just using the contracts we've got to encourage people to deliver the most sustainable solutions they can to us. Councillor Huntsman.
Yeah, well, first of all, Chair, I just want to check, can I make a general point, because I'm new to this committee and I just wanted to get some understanding of what we're doing here, you know?
Certainly, we, as it says in the report here, we are reviewing the plan that's intended to deliver significant reductions in our carbon footprint.
Well, it's related to the carbon footprint, which I wanted to just bring up, you know.
Well, that's one of the aspects. We've also touched on the importance of the water consumption, etc., but they're not directly a key part of this plan. So, anything to add there, Amanda?
No, so this specific report focuses on our carbon footprint. It does look a little bit wider in terms of what residents may or may not want to do, although at this point we've really just focused on setting up some engagement with residents so that they can have some sort of choice and input into that particular aspect of stuff.
Yeah, just going back on that, I mean, talking about residents, I did do a very rough straw poll before I came here and spoke to various residents on the seafront, actually, that I know, tell them I was on this committee. And the thing that came up most was that they understand about carbon footprint, but they also said to me that it seems that in the United Kingdom, we're responsible for less than 1% of carbon emissions. So while it may be a very noble cause, what are we actually achieving when we've got like China, India, America, who are not, as it were, playing along with this? And their concern was that it seems a very expensive process to do this, and will it impact on residents and taxpayers, council taxpayers here? And for example, things like solar panels, which is a big initial outlay, when does the council get the return on that money, or any of the money that's spent on this, you know, this ambition to be, to reduce our carbon footprint?
Well, I think specifically on if you're referring to the panels on waterside, for example, we got a grant for that. So de facto for the council, the return's very rapid. However, typical return on those depends on usage, etc., and what you're paying originally. So it's a case by case basis, but 6 to 10 years is typical. I think the overall global situation is well beyond our remit, but achieving, energy efficiency reduces cost for the borough overall, and just simple things like switching light bulbs to use less energy to emit the same amount of light quite naturally cuts costs in a time when we had hugely unstable energy bills. So I think overall, we should benefit from doing this. Amanda, have you anything to add?
I mean, it is as simple as that. Where we are using energy, we are susceptible to fluctuations in energy prices. So if we can manage our energy usage, then obviously as our overall budget position is less susceptible to those risks.
I think just building on that with take Waterside Farm, for example, every kilowatt of power generated by those solar panels now, we don't have to buy because it's effectively already bought through the panels. So every watt that's generated is a cost saving for the council.
Yeah, I understand that, Chair. I mean, I've got some experience in it because I've had people wanting to put solar panels on land and property that I've got, but I asked them the same simple question, that this is the outlay you want me to spend, when will I see it back? And no one's given me a definitive answer, I mean, years ago, I started off my life as a timber importer. I used to have a sheet of plywood, someone gave me money for it, and they got so we knew it was a straight deal, as we call it, but I've never got the answer of when exactly, and you've given me an answer, which is, you say 6 to 7 years, so, I'm happy to see that,
Typically. Don't quote me on it for everything. Are there any follow-up questions on that part, committee? Okay, I'm losing my place because I was paging through, but I believe we're on the point of reviewing the council's treasury management policy. I did have a view on this myself, but I'll take any additional questions first. I think in our discussions previously, we touched in some depth on the complexity and controversy that there is around greenwashing and the actual definition of an ethical investment, which is a complex area that the financial sector is struggling with to a degree, and the regulations are somewhat in a state of flux. My personal view is that this is probably not a priority, given that we've pretty much got 2 to 3 years to run as this council. I think we should avoid obviously unethical investments, but getting into the minutiae of the rest of the debate on that, I don't think is going to be particularly productive for the council, and I think it should be a slightly lower priority than the direct action that we can take. Is that Councillor Ainsley?
Microphone, please.
Thank you. Bit confusing because we've covered all this already, but we did discuss investments that should be actually looked at for the minimum of 5-year term, and as we're not going to be council for 5 years, then this is really irrelevant to us. Thank you.
Okay, is that a general consensus? Nobody's objecting. Okay, thank you. So moving on to the Assistant Director of Housing, Health and Partnerships portfolio, we've got implement the government's Warm Homes Local Grant Scheme, which will encourage retrofit of privately owned homes, particularly in the deprived areas of our borough and the lower income areas. Is there any feedback on that? I think personally that retrofit makes sense. So, Councillor Huntsman.
Yeah, sorry, Chairman. You said privately owned. Are these private landlords that own these properties? Is that what you mean by privately owned?
It says privately owned homes, so it could include that, to my understanding. But I'll let Amanda clarify.
So it's a scheme operated by the government, and anyone who owns their home can apply, but equally, and they have to either live in a postcode that is already identified, and there are some postcodes on Canvey that are identified, or have an income that's below a particular point, and then they can apply for that scheme. People who live in rented accommodation can apply, but the arrangement then ends up with their landlord in terms of getting that installed onto that property.
Thank you. Just coming back, is that basically like what we know is like the Eco4 grant? Is it something like that?
It's the next step on the Eco4. So whereas I think Eco4 was specifically on park homes, this actually applies to general housing stock, and people can apply for it if they meet that criteria, either the postcode criteria or the income criteria.
So that will be, again, for things like new boilers, solar panels, that type of thing, would it? Like boiler replacement?
Yeah, my understanding is it's for insulation, heating systems, and potentially solar as well. That's my understanding. It's being coordinated at an Essex level. So where we initially thought we would have to do local validation checks, it looks like that's been done at an Essex-wide level for us. So.
Councillor Ainsley.
Thank you. Yes, and I can say we covered this before, and I think I mentioned about whether or not this will be means tested, and will it also come with a condition that it's funding met, so the resident will need to pay half or something like that. I mean, we don't really have any clarification on what that's going to entail at the moment.
I think we just covered that in that it's a central government scheme that's based on index of deprivation or income. So we don't actually have control over that element of it.
So in terms of the funding is up to £30,000, and you have a surveyor that comes around as part of the scheme to identify what it is that they will do for you, and that in theory that funding would cover what they identify. So it may be, for example, that like some forms of houses can't have certain types of insulation, so they'll identify the right type of insulation for that property, because if you don't have a cavity wall, you can't have cavity wall insulation, for example. So
I can just come back on that. So is it conditional on the householder or renter to fund some of this, so it'll be completely free? Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, just going on from what Councillor Ainsley said, my understanding is that although it's centrally funded, it's operated by third-party contractors, and that it is means tested in terms of. I understand that you've got to be on some sort of universal credit or similar, and it is fully funded. But also, would it be helping those properties that fall in the sort of lower EPC bands, you know, to raise the bands up from say E or F to like a C or a B, you know?
yes. Yes.
I believe there are specific criteria for the number of bands that you have to move through to qualify for certain provisions, but I'm doing that from memory, not reading it in front of me. Are there any more questions on this element? I think it's a good idea as far as we can to help people get insulated. Thank you. Okay. I'm going backwards through here because of the way it's numbered. We've also got the follow-on part of the action, which is over the page on page 17, applying for the Warm Homes Social Housing Fund to address these sort of issues with our own housing stock, which I find it hard to object to unless anybody's got any questions. Okay, moving on to the next point on new homes. This is obviously included in the draft plan as well, but new homes commissioned by the council are constructed to operational net zero standards as per ECC guidance. Any questions on this one?
Yeah, Chair. Yeah, you say net zero guidance. I mean, what in layman's terms is that, and is that going to cost? Again, going back to costs, is that going to be a burden to the council in terms of costs? Would that be an increased cost to the council to meet these specific targets for net zero?
I'll ask for clarification, but my understanding is that this is a requirement for people who are building new homes. Obviously, that would apply to us as a council for any housing stock we build.
So at this point in time, the estimated additional costs are set out in column 4 of the report and are 6.3% additional for houses and 6.9% additional for flats. That being said, this has been incorporated into the emerging Castle Point plan. So therefore, in the longer term, that will be the base position for development in Castle Point, assuming that plan is adopted.
I think the key thing to observe is that this is looking at operational net zero, which will mean that your running costs of the property are lower, so there might be a higher initial cost by the figures said there, but overall running the property should be cheaper.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Again, it's the land of promise where it should be. My only concern is, and you know, of course, I'm sceptical. You know, I don't have to. I'm unashamedly sceptical on a lot of this. Is that houses are expensive enough already. I mean, getting on the housing ladder is. I mean, when I started, it was 3 times my salary. Now it's 8 times. If the banks will lend to you at all, making it even more expensive to meet a target. That may or may not be achievable. And again, I go back to my point that, again, it's a very noble cause, which I'm yet to be convinced of based on, you know, our actual carbon footprint and what we can do here. But I'm just concerned that it's going to increase the cost of new builds, that's for the developers when they build new houses, along with any other house that's built, and make it even more out of reach for people that want to get on the housing ladder.
Councillor Ainsley?
Yeah, thank you. Councillor Huntman, I just think that it would be beneficial if Amanda would explain to you that what we're doing is we're adopting the Essex County Council net zero policy, and we're aligning our values to what they've already agreed with a panel of consultants. But I mean, to actually to address your other point, isn't it better that we're building better houses, which will keep costs down for the new owners? They'll be warmer, they'll have better insulation, there'll be less problems with mould and air quality, things like that. So that little increase in percentage, I know that houses are expensive. Of course, houses are expensive, but if we're building better houses and we're providing better health, isn't that better for the environment and for people?
Well, I'd certainly agree with you, but my argument would be that we've, you know, I certainly know I've been in the construction trade, supplying construction materials for the best part of 30 years. We've been doing that anyway. We've, you know, why have we got to reach a new target? And of course, I agree with insulation. I agree with good the boiler grant. I agree with all of that. You know, but some of the things I think that are again, I can't get a straight answer that, you know, if we're going for this agenda of going absolutely green, like air source heat pumps and that, when, you know, yes, spend all the money to do it, but when are they going to get when are these residents going to get the return, or when does the council get the return? No one can give me, you know, no one can say to me, if you spend 100 grand, we'll get that back in 3 years. No one can give me a straight answer. So that's what I'm looking at. I'm genuinely concerned that it's an ambition that we're told that we have to do, but all I see is increases in energy prices and not decreases. So the man in the street, I'm only relaying what my constituents are asking me, you know, because, you know, they also are concerned that, you know, that behind this net zero, it seems to be there's going to be a lot more costs to the hard-working people of Castle Point, you know. So that's something I want to try and prevent, you know.
Before we come in, can I just remind the committee that the Essex plan has already been endorsed by Cabinet. So we are, because at our last meetings we recommended Cabinet review that and endorse it. So I think we're not in a position to change this at this point.
So if I can just come in on this point. So what we're actually looking at here is the council house building programme as opposed to general house building. So this is about house building for people on our housing register now and in the future. So any cost would be incurred by the council, but any saving would be incurred by the residents of those future homes, who are typically the people who are on the lowest incomes and potentially the most vulnerable within our community.
Thank you. That's a very useful clarification to bring to our attention. Much appreciated. So given that residents won't bear the direct cost of that, are we happy to proceed with that? Yeah. I just have been reminded that we did have a discussion previously. If we can go back to the past two, Warm Homes Social Housing Fund and the overall Warm Homes grants. that as a committee we'd said it would be a good idea to just insert the words and other similar schemes, because there are changes afoot. There's a currently review of those underway by the Department for Net Zero. Is that Councillor May?
This is just a basic one again. When we're talking about the new homes and making them carbon friendly and everything, at our last meeting we actually spoke about a certain amount of trees being put into the plan. So I think the top of my head, I think it was 6 trees for every new build we looked at. And, you know, because we're losing green spaces, so getting trees in the plan as well, I think is a win-win. So is that something that we've moved on forward with? And
I'll defer to Amanda, who's been instrumental in bringing the local plan together.
So we have quite a strong environment policy within the draft cost point plan. What number? 2, 3? It's either, I think it's EMV2. I'd urge you to look at that and ensure you're satisfied with that, Councillor May. And if you're not, obviously respond within the consultation period around that particular point. But it does look at biodiversity net gain and tree planting and so forth as part of new development. So check out that policy, ensure you're happy with it. And if you're not, obviously respond to the consultation, clarifying that point. At this point, that's what I can say to you in respect of that.
If I can just bring us back to confirm that we're happy to add the warm homes or other amendment, just to ensure that it's clear as we move forward that we'll apply for all schemes that can bring these benefits to residents. Any objections to that? Good, thank you. Okay, and we've got the coming on to the local action of surveying 70% of our properties by September 2025 and acquiring EPC readings for, should that be EPC ratings, for an additional 900 properties. Councillor Huntsman.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'm actually on the Housing Improvement Board, and I was shocked to find out that none of our properties are EPC rated, and I couldn't get an answer to why that is, bearing in mind that all private landlords have to have EPC rating before they're allowed to rent a property. So are we now saying that all our properties will be PPC rated, and if they are, if they're not like E and above, then they'll be upgraded?
So my understanding from the work that the HIP board are doing, or the HIP is doing, is that we will have those EPC ratings next month. In the absence of those EPC ratings, we have not been able to apply for what was previously, it was the equivalent of the Warm Home Social Housing Fund. We weren't able to apply for what that was previously because we didn't have those ratings. So having those ratings then puts us in a better position to be able to apply for funding where we find that the EPC ratings are poor.
Are there any additional questions on that? It sounds like we're making much needed progress through that programme. So, okay. Thank you. Moving on to, we will be upgrading existing housing with modern insulation, energy efficient heating systems, and a target will be established based on the survey work that we've just discussed. I think that's just a logical extension of that, but happy to take questions. Councillor Ainsley.
Yes, it was upgrading existing housing with modern insulation. So how are we planning to dispose of what we're taking out?
Not one that I can answer, but I believe that would just form a normal part of the contracted work.
I mean, some of these properties may not have any insulation to take out at this point. So until we know the outcomes of the survey, we don't know what needs to go in, indeed what needs to come out.
So are we happy with the recommendation that we upgrade our housing stock as best we can? Good, thank you very much. Moving on to the AD for Legal and Democratic Services. We will offer the carbon literacy course to all members, which is just to make sure that we all fully understand this across the whole membership of the council. Are there any questions on that? Okay, moving to...
I take it that's meant it's not compulsory to attend that.
It will be offered. I can't understand any reason why somebody wouldn't want to improve their knowledge myself, but if you've got questions and are feeling sceptical about it, Jamie, I'd say it's the ideal course for you.
Look, I just say, I'm sure no one wants me to take my shirt off, but if I did, you'd see scars on my back, because in 1976 we had the hottest summer and I was on walking on days and I got burnt terribly, you know. Of course, no one ever mentioned climate change then because it was called summer. But so yeah, I'm still waiting to hear a strong argument against it. But of course, I come here, you know, with an open mind, and you know, I treat everything reasonably and fairly. Just one point, which is a general point again, which is not on this. Have we got any plans at all for any wind farms in Castle Point? You know, because don't get me started on that. But have we got any plans for that?
Well, I've not seen any on the weekly updates that we get. But
So due to the... We're located in a windy location, but we're also located in a place that's popular for birds, particularly birds of migratory species that are rare and protected by international law, and consequently it's not the best place for wind turbines because there is a risk to birds.
I also think, given the housing density that we've got, we'd struggle to fit one in anywhere. But Councillor Ainsley.
Yes, I mentioned when we looked at this before, is this training going to be made available to members as well, as particularly Councillor Huntman, I think, might benefit?
It says to all members. This is an extension of work that's going on with staff, as far as I understand. And I think, thank you for that. I've just been reminded that we also asked for it to be explored if there is, given that we've got the capability to deliver this training, an option to extend it to our local business community if they wish to join. I think it would be good if we could explore that. I don't know whether the course licensing will allow it. Any further questions? Okay, moving over onto page 18. We'll encourage digital communication to reduce paper consumption in meetings and correspondence. I think we're reasonably advanced on that, but if there are any questions on that, I do have one that I raised myself. Councillor Ainsley?
Yes, I raised myself that we should look into electronic billboards for public engagement.
Yeah, I think we've actually used them a little for the planning consultation. There's certainly a couple on Canby, one in Hadley, so I do think the use of those would be good to continue. I do have questions on this in terms of. I think it's clear that you can reduce paper consumption by not sending paper, and clearly you're transporting something that actually weighs something, but I'm not sure. I think we should encourage it just for ease of communication, but I'm not convinced that you actually reduce your carbon footprint by storing stuff in data centres, despite what has been in the news today, which is inaccurate about water usage for data centres, but that's another story. Are we happy with encouraging digital communication just for practical reasons, if nothing else? Okay. And to final action on this section, embed the consideration of climate impact in decision making for Cabinet and Council. Any questions on that? Page 18, second point down in local action. Thank you. And this is moving on to Assistant Director of People and Engagement. It's the carbon literacy course to be offered to all staff and other relevant courses to improve our sustainability performance. I think we'd already agreed to do it ourselves, so I think that's a natural to do. So, unless there are any questions. Moving on to page 19. Integrate within our social media planning and activities regular signposting to the sharing of the Essex's green communications. Councillor Ainsley.
Just for clarification of, because this has been live streamed, can you just state what that actually means, please, Amanda?
So Essex County Council have a brand which is Essex is Green, and certain communications about things related to the green environment and to managing waste and reducing your carbon footprint as residents is sent out under that brand. So that's what that means.
Any other questions on that point? Okay, moving to the next point. Work with Essex County Council to develop a brand identity for Essex's green communications for Castle Point. Now we did have some discussion on that, and if I can just summarise what we were talking about for the benefit of the people who were not on the committee at that point, we said that we couldn't see huge value in developing another brand, even though the cost's very modest. When we're going to have complete local government reorganisation within 2 years. So my personal view, and I think that's shared by most of us who were at the meetings, is that this shouldn't be a priority at all. Is that agreed? Agreed, right. Thank you very much. The next point on travel, preparing a travel plan for the council that explores how we can encourage staff to make sustainable travel choices. The general consensus when we were speaking was that we wanted that to happen as fast as possible so it can have an immediate impact and staff can benefit from it. So unless there's any objections to that, I think that's the direction we could take, is to do that and accelerate it. And we also, I think most of us who've worked in even small and medium-sized companies will have been offered at some point a cycle to work scheme, etc. I think rebuilding that sort of scheme ourselves doesn't seem to make a lot of sense when there are many commercial providers of it. So I think our view when we met briefly was that we should explore commercial options there rather than reinvent the wheel. Councillor Ainsley.
Yeah, a point I did make was about the topography of Castle Point. I mean, it's just not practical for some people that live down the hill to have to cycle up the hill. I mean, they get very fit at the end of it, but it's not practical for everybody.
I think that's what the electric bikes are for. Councillor.
Yeah, thank you. On this, we did speak about this in the past as well. It's all right telling people to, cycle to work and all that, but for safety reasons, we've got to get cycle lanes in on our roads and that. And that's something that needs to be put on the new planning rules as well, in my opinion, because when we're building these new estates and things like that, I've said this before at Essex as well, roads need to be made wider so cycle lanes can be put in. And I think that would be a win-win with climate change.
Amanda, have you got any observations on that in the context of the plan?
So back in June, I want to say, the Cabinet endorsed the local walking and cycling infrastructure plan for Castle Point that's been developed by Essex County Council, and Essex County Council subsequently adopted that and published that last month. It does identify improvements to cycle, or potential improvements to cycle routes across Castle Point, and that is now integrated into Local Transport Plan 4 that was published by Essex County Council for consultation on, I want to say something like the 29th of July or something like that, a couple of days before we went out to consultation on the Castle Point plan. And we do cross-reference to the local walking and cycling improvement plan within the Castle Point plan. So all of the policy is aligning around that particular point. Okay.
I think it's possibly worth observing that sustainable travel is not just cycling. If we can, those of us who can manage to jump on a bus, etc., occasionally will be doing our bit. And I count myself as a laggard in that, but it's an option that we should all consider. Car sharing, carpooling, all of that sort of thing are also part of the potential there. So I think I got slightly ahead. Implementing the travel plan we think should go as fast as possible, and the salary sacrifice schemes for affordable access to EVs and bikes, we should explore the commercial options for. Any additional questions? I can see some careful reading going on there, so I'll just pause. Are we all okay? Okay, so on to page 20. Where?
Bottom of 19.
Bottom of 19, apologies. Okay,
The other way round.
I really do dislike when we've got landscape materials. To expand the use of hybrid mail solutions to drive down the use of physical resources where email information is available. I'd suggest we just change that to electronic information is available, but that's nitpicky. Are there any questions on that? We pretty much covered it earlier on. Councillor Ainsley?
Yeah, just want to emphasise again the use of electronic billboards.
Okay, noted. Any additional additions? Any additions to that? Okay, so continuing on to page 20. Again, looking at making sure we get the digital communications right, expanding the use of the website and digital solutions to enable self-service. Reducing the need for travel. I mean, there are still a few services where people need to travel up here to pay, for example. It would be good to see that addressed. Are there any questions on this? Councillor Ainsley.
Yeah, I think I raised this as well before. I'm just concerned that we're not going to exclude every service or every person from speaking to somebody face to face, because that is so important. I mean, it's not just for the elderly, it's, for other people that need to actually speak to somebody rather than trying to make sense of something on a website. I think we should make sure that we've always got a face-to-face option available.
I can't disagree with that, but any other questions on that?
Just on the face-to-face, I personally, it's just my opinion, I think much more is achieved when you have actual face-to-face meetings than what you do having digital ones. Because putting it bluntly, when you're having face-to-face meetings, you can see if someone's passionate about what they're talking about and they've done their own work, where sometimes on just the digital meetings, it's just like people just talking. So I think face-to-face meetings are still the best factor and a win-win. That's my opinion.
Okay, I think that there I think we're pretty clear there. We're looking at a 70% shift away. That will still leave 30% things. I think a lot of people. The website definitely needs improving, and actually, to your point of struggling with the website, hopefully we'll get to the point where it's not a struggle and it's actually genuinely easy to use and help people get things done. And then we've got the point of a 50% reduction in the amount of printing across the council. I personally think that's going to be increasingly difficult because we're already fairly low on the amount of printing that we do, but that should definitely be a goal. Are there any questions on here? Ah, yes. Yeah, that was, thank you. We also had a note to ourselves that, to enable this, we should, on all communications from the council, proactively ask if we can email them in the future. So every opportunity to invite people to subscribe to email conversations should be taken. Is that agreed? Yep, thank you. And then we've got to ensure that corporate policies align with sustainability goals, integrating environmental, social and governance principles into decision-making and operations. Our key question when we discussed this was whether we can commit to that without knowing what the ESG principles that we're recommending are. Now, we've got policy work coming forward on that, but social and governance principles are not necessarily directly related to this report, so I'd be interested in your views on what priority we give this in the context directly of this carbon reduction plan. Councillor Ainsley. Can you switch your microphone on, Councillor?
We can't really comment, as you say, because we don't really know what it means. So all we can say is that we hope that it's going to be clear and we can to adopt the policy. I don't know what else we could say on that, really.
So are we saying that we should strip that back to say, as this is a specific policy, recommend that we strip that back to environmental principles? I mean, it's not that we should step away from social and governance. Governance is core to what we do, and we wouldn't be sitting in this room unless we cared about actually making society work. But I just think within the scope of this that perhaps that's a little broad.
Agreed, because what we're looking at here is environmental policy, which incorporates some of the social and governance, but essentially it's the environmental policy that we're looking at and implementing. So yeah, I would agree with that amendment.
Yeah, I don't think until we've got the policy, ESG policy in front of us, we can recommend the Cabinet adopt something quite so broad. Any objections to that approach? No. Okay, thank you. Moving on to the Assistant Director of Recreations section. Bottom of page 20. Leisure facilities to actively promote walking, cycling as part of healthy, active lifestyle, and to offer bike storage and organise community programmes and events. I mean, we can't encourage cycling without providing secure lock-up, etc. So to me, that makes sense. Any questions? Councillor Ainsley.
I did raise at the time why the cost of bike stands is £6,000.
That I can't answer.
So I will go back to, it's probably the Director of Estates actually, rather than the Director of Recreation, on the particular costs around that. But there's a piece of work once we've got your priorities and what's in, what's out and so forth, to cost all of this completely again. So where you've got particular concerns like that, then I will go back to Estates and see if we can get a reason for the cost or a more reasonable cost.
And can I just ask for clarification on the potential carbon saving? In there we say, based on the data from other awareness approaches, we can expect a 5 to 15% reduction in CO2 emissions from those positively engaged in the programme of activities. Now, I don't dispute that those individuals could reduce their individual carbon footprint by 5 to 15%, but I think maybe a bit of clarification there, because we won't achieve a council-wide or borough-wide 5 to 15% reduction here. I think so. Could do with some clarification. It would be nice if you could do something so simple and achieve that gain, but I don't think it is. That rolls us over onto 21, where that point continues with launching sustainability challenges for staff and members to reduce our own carbon footprints and track progress and reward achievements. As that can be done at no cost, are there any objections to offering that? None? Okay. Moving on to what will no doubt be controversial, which is the Assistant Director of Waste and Recycling. I'm being reminded that we, moving back to the sustainability challenges, it was suggested, I think possibly by Tim, who's no longer on the committee, that we have a sustainability category in the Mayor's Business Awards. No views or objections, questions? None? Okay, so we'll... Amanda, if you want to come back to us on the... having got the point that we should put sustainability category in, we move on to waste, yeah?
Yep, so in terms of waste, obviously, it's a bit of a moving feast, and when these actions were recommended, I think that the thought process was probably slightly different in terms of our approach to waste than it possibly is at the moment. So you probably just need to bear that in mind as you go through these points.
Yeah, I think the context is important. There's been a 2-year plus now exercise which has spanned several committees to refresh our waste handling and to improve our recycling rates, which have stagnated. But the last government then changed the national guidelines, so work has had to restart on that to a degree. So it's still a work in progress, but the consultation that was done recently did say that residents do want to move to wheeled bins for waste collection, and all of the data suggests that will improve the quality of recycling and the rates. So subject to that planning going ahead and we're getting the definitive details, I think for me that's a yes on that. Are there any questions? Councillor Ainsley?
It's not a question as such. Trying to remember what we discussed in our previous meetings, but we discussed about incentives for residents to recycle more, and education. Obviously, covers slightly in there. Kind of crosses over with other committees that I've been on. So yeah, so just to make sure that we're educating residents and offering some kind of incentives, because it is helpful to encourage them to recycle more and cleanly. That's another thing actually, which is an issue, is to make sure they've got clean recyclables. Otherwise, it's all wasted.
Yeah, I think contamination is a massive issue in the recycling streams, and that's why in there we do have a note for those who are not got the documents in front of them, that the goal is to have 2 education and engagement roles to help support that progress. Councillor Huntsman. Thank
you, Chairman. Yeah, it says here we're diverting 1,000 tonnes of waste from landfill, saves 400 tonnes of CO2. I don't know if it's a question for us or waste and recycling, but is all everything that we recycle, is 100% of that recycled in here? And is there any truth when some people say that some of it is basically shipped abroad and ends up in landfill in other countries? We passing the problem on to someone else, or are we actually 100% recycling everything here?
Good question. There's clearly been evidence of that happening in the past, but it's not a question we can answer. Maybe that's something that we can punt to the Scrutiny Committee if you'd like to suggest. Councillor Ainsley.
Yes, and I'm reminded that the recycling facility that Essex County Council recently signed up to actually hadn't put in place any of the conditions that were set on awarding that contract to them.
Disappointing, but beyond our remit. So are we happy broadly that this is going to be covered by the evolving policy on waste and that we should agree with the increased resource for education to deliver whatever programmes agreed in the end? No objections? Okay. And we then talked about improving the environment at and around bring banks, so the various types of recycling facilities that we've got in some of the car parks and other areas. Councillor Ainsley.
Again, that leads to like incentives, because if the if people aren't incentivised to go to the banks because they're in such a state, broken glass everywhere, we do need to keep them looking nice, so people want to use them.
Yeah, I personally think we did have questions on the spend of £5,000 per bring back to improve it. I think the most substantive thing that we should request is much faster response to requests to empty these, because when they get filled up over the weekends, people just leave the bags of they're trying to do the right thing and recycle. So I think the key thing before we spend money on it should be to make sure that our contracts are being upheld with regular emptying. Councillor Ainsley.
And regular inspecting, because there's always broken glass and litter around them. So yeah, this is what I'm saying about making sure they're nice and clean.
I agree, and there have also been problems recently. They've been on social media of people bin diving for their own profit in the clothing banks, which I'd encourage anybody who sees it to happen to have a quiet word. So are we generally seeking to improve the environment but adding more regular inspections and prompt emptying? If we can build on that. Thank you. And you touched on this a little earlier, Amanda, but modernise and upgrade the council's fleet of, and this is the fleet of refuse vehicles. I think maybe that itself could have clarifications. By transitioning to more sustainable and eco-friendly vehicles. Are there any questions on that? Councillor Hunt.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I mean, it's related to this point and the following point about the additional cost of fuel. Again, it goes back to my original point. This is obviously £71,000 cost, and there's another £71,000 on the following £140,000 cost to the council. No doubt, that will be reflected, with a cost in some way to the taxpayers, and the reason we're doing this is to, correct me if I'm wrong, is to improve our carbon footprint. But again, I just state that we are nationally we're responsible for less than 1%. I mean, God forbid there's ever a tsunami on the seafront. The fact that we've reduced our carbon footprint will have no effect on that at all. It's unless other countries like China and India follow suit, then I can't see this cost that's going to be a burden at this council and ultimately our residents. I can't see it in my mind to be justified. But maybe, as Councillor Ainsley said, I need to go on that course. Because I understand it's a new religion, and I'm happy to join up. Maybe let's see.
I know Councillor Ainsley, but remember this is through the chair, not across the room.
Yes, thank you. Through the chair. Yes, Councillor Huntman, it's think of it as a ripple in a pool. You throw a pebble into a pool and it creates a little ripple, and that little ripple spreads. So you're actually, even by making these little changes, you're improving the lives and the environment for wildlife and people that live in this country. So we don't want dirty streets, we don't want dirty water, we don't want dirty air. So all these little changes that we're making will improve the lives of our residents. Isn't that worth it?
through you, Chair. Look, I'm yet to be convinced of the merits of this, and until I hear a strong enough argument otherwise, of course, we want we want clean streets, and hopefully our the council workers keep them clean. But I can't. This is huge costs that are affecting us and nationally. And again, I say, it's some of the major players in the world have decided not to run with this, and we are probably one of the most expensive countries in the world for energy costs now, and that's concerning to me and all our residents. And one of the reasons of that is we are following this net zero agenda. Which I think is unilateral. I mean, the argument is we lead, others follow. Well, I can't see anyone following us at the moment.
I'm going to join in at the risk of steering us away from the local politics, which we're here to. Just a couple of observations. If we don't import oil, we're not at the mercy of other countries hiking the oil price and manipulating the market, which this helps us do. It helps cap costs for the council, even though it is an additional expense. China's got masses of coal burning, but they are installing solar at such a ridiculous rate that they are going to overtake us and they're going to cut their economic cost. I think the more we can do to get energy independence for the country, the better off we will be.
Yeah, just to come back on that, Chair, talking of oil, liquid gold, we've got it in abundance in the North Sea, but of course it's completely taxed out of existence. No one wants to take it on, which is a crying shame, not only for the people up there who could benefit from work, and also would help bring the energy costs considerably down for the hard-pressed taxpayer in the United Kingdom. But
we should have a chat outside. We sell most of our oil overseas and don't actually use most of it here. Anyway, I think we're moving on to any questions on that section. I mean, you've said that you're sceptical about it, but are we happy to put that as a committee as a whole to put that forward as the policy? Nods all round, even a slight one from you there, Councillor Ainsley. Oh, no formal vote on it, but a good discussion. Okay, so moving on to 22, final straight. The service rebaselining the vehicle fleet to be a maximum of 8 years old, and to plan for diesel configurations that can run on the treated vegetable oil. And this will have a massive impact. It'll have a very big impact on the overall council's carbon footprint, is my understanding, reducing the emissions of the fleet by 93%. Any questions on that? Councillor Ainsley?
Yes, thank you, Chair. So, Councillor Huntman, I take your North Sea oil and I raise you vegetable oil. We can actually start growing our own rapeseed oil and hemp and all. I mean, I know that's a bit controversial, but all these things that would actually produce our own homemade vegetable oil, which is much cleaner for the environment, much cleaner for people to breathe the air, keep down the national health costs because the improvement in health. I mean, it's a no-brainer, really.
Through you, Chair. When I wake up every morning, I take a deep breath in of the lovely smell of Canby seafront. The air quality is wonderful down there. But the bottom line is, Councillor Ainsley, and it's in black and white here, an additional cost of £71,000. So that's my concern is my constituents, the residents, being able to afford this in very, very difficult times. It's, like I say, it's very noble, but what underscores this all is increased costs, which are, in my view, significant.
Councillor Ainsley, briefly, please.
Yes, through the chair. Back at you, Councillor Huntman. But your residents will be able to live longer in which to pay these costs off.
I think I'm going to draw this to.
Thank you, Councillor Ainsley. I will allow you the last word because I'm a gentleman, but my neighbour is 91, so he's doing very well. Thank you.
I appreciate the good humour with which this debate's taken place. So are we happy with the proposal that we are managing the vehicle fleet age and switching to vegetable oil as a proposal? Okay. Thank you. I think it's been a productive session. We are at the end of our analysis. So I need to move the recommendation that, subject to the changes that we've discussed, that this action plan is prepared by officers to include those changes, report back to a further meeting of this subcommittee with those changes so that we can propose it goes ahead to Cabinet. Can I have a seconder for that? Councillor Ainsley?
Happy to second that, Chair.
Thank you. And committee, are we happy with that? Yep, unanimous, right. Thank you very much. Members, when this climate action plan returns to the committee and subject to approval, as I said, that will be our recommendation to Cabinet that it's adopted. So one final step on getting this over the line, but that does conclude our business for this evening. Thank you for your attendance, and the meeting closes at 8:14. Thanks.